Before I start the story, here's a quick preview. Every night at midnight, Emma Clarke hears the soft, insistent tapping at her door. And every night, it grows bolder. As nightmares bleed into reality and her mind begins to fracture, Emma realizes the horror isn't outside trying to get in. It's already inside. When she finally discovers the truth hidden within her home's walls, it's far worse than she ever imagined. If you enjoy the content, please like the video and subscribe to my channel, Nightmare Archives. Emma Clarke stretched her arms overhead, surveying the scattered boxes that still dominated her new living room. After 3 days of unpacking, she'd barely made a dent. The old Victorian rental had seemed charming when she signed the lease. Original hardwood floors, crown molding, and enough space for a graduate student's budget. Now, alone in the growing darkness, the house's quirks felt less endearing: the creaking floorboards, the windows that stuck halfway, the basement door that wouldn't quite close. "What do you think, Milo?" she asked, the orange tabby weaving between her ankles. "Home sweet home." The cat meowed noncommittally, padding toward the kitchen in search of dinner. Emma followed, flipping on lights as she moved through the house. October in New England brought early darkness, and the house's tall trees blocked what little moonlight might have filtered through the windows. After microwaving leftover pasta, Emma settled onto her couch, the one piece of furniture she'd managed to position properly, and opened her laptop. Her psychology thesis wouldn't write itself, and Professor Harmon expected her outline by Monday. She'd chosen to explore sleep disorders and their correlation with trauma, a topic that had fascinated her since her own childhood struggles with night terrors following her parents' divorce. Milo jumped onto the couch beside her, curling into a tight ball. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling a loose shutter somewhere on the second floor. Emma made a mental note to ask the landlord about it tomorrow. The old house embraced the night easily, shadows deepening in corners and stretching across walls. By 11:30, Emma's eyes burned from staring at her screen. She saved her document, closed her laptop, and stood, stretching her stiff muscles. Time for bed. After brushing her teeth and changing into an oversized t-shirt and shorts, Emma climbed into bed, Milo settling at her feet. She had just begun to drift towards sleep when she heard it. Tap, tap. The sound was so faint she might have imagined it. Emma lifted her head, waiting. For several seconds, nothing. Then tap, tap. Soft, but distinct. The sound came from downstairs, near the back of the house. The kitchen door, maybe. Emma glanced at her phone. Midnight exactly. Probably just the house settling, she told herself. Old houses made noise, that's what the landlord had warned when she signed the lease. Or perhaps a branch hitting the side of the house. The ancient oak in the backyard had limbs that stretched close to the kitchen window. Emma pulled the covers higher and closed her eyes, willing herself to relax. The sound didn't return, and eventually, exhaustion pulled her under. The next morning, Emma nearly forgot about the tapping until she walked into the kitchen for coffee. Sunlight streamed through the windows, washing the worn linoleum in golden light. Everything looked so ordinary. The chipped countertops, the humming refrigerator, the slightly askew cabinet doors. She opened the back door and stepped onto the tiny porch, scanning the yard. No fallen branches, no obvious explanation for the tapping. Just house noises, she muttered, returning inside to prepare for class. That day passed in a flurry of lectures, study groups, and a quick coffee with her friend Jess, who wanted all the details about Emma's new place. "Are you settling in okay?" Jess asked, stirring her lat. "That's such an old neighborhood." "It's fine," Emma replied. "Quiet, which helps with studying. The house is kind of creaky, but the rent was too good to pass up." "You're braver than me," Jess laughed. "I couldn't live alone in some ancient house. I'd convinced myself it was haunted within a week." But Emma rolled her eyes. "It's just an old house, not the Amityville horror." But that night, as Emma worked on her thesis, she found herself glancing at the clock as midnight approached. When 12 o'clock arrived, she held her breath, listening. Nothing. She exhaled, feeling foolish for her anticipation. just as she returned her attention to her laptop. Tap. Tap. Emma froze. The sound was unmistakable this time. 3 distinct taps against the back door, soft but deliberate. She set her laptop aside and stood hesitating. "Hello," she called, feeling immediately ridiculous. Who would be at her door at midnight? No answer came, just 3 more taps, slightly louder. Tap, tap, tap. Heart quickening, Emma moved toward the kitchen. She flipped on the light, illuminating the empty room. Through the door's small window, she could see only darkness. The motion sensor porch light hadn't activated, which seemed strange if someone was standing there. "Who's there?" she called more firmly, anger beginning to replace fear. Was some neighborhood kid playing pranks on the new resident? Silence stretched for several long seconds. Then, just as Emma started to turn away, tap, tap. The sound came directly in front of her, as if someone's fingers were inches from her face, separated only by the wooden door. Emma jumped back, adrenaline surging through her body. She retreated to the living room, grabbing her phone to call campus security, but stopped herself before dialing. What would she say? That she heard tapping? They'd think she was being ridiculous. Instead, Emma checked all the locks, turned on every light downstairs, and returned to her bedroom, Milo following closely at her heels. The tapping didn't resume, and eventually, Emma drifted into an uneasy sleep. By the 3rd night, Emma had convinced herself she was overacting. The house was old houses made noises. It was probably pipes, or the wood contracting as temperatures dropped overnight. Nothing supernatural, nothing threatening. Yet at midnight, she found herself sitting rigid on her couch, waiting. The taps came precisely on schedule, 3 soft knocks against the back door. Emma had prepared this time. She grabbed her phone, opened the video recording app, and moved quietly toward the kitchen. The taps continued, rhythmic and patient. Emma's hand trembled slightly as she held her phone toward the door. Recording. Through the small window, she could see nothing but the dark outline of her yard. "If someone's out there," she called, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm recording this, and I've called the police." The second part was a lie, but it made her feel braver. The tapping stopped abruptly. Emma waited, phone still recording, but heard nothing more. After several minutes, she reviewed the footage. The video showed her dimly lit kitchen, the door frame visible at the edge. The audio captured the taps clearly. 3, pause, 3 more. Pause, but also something else, something she hadn't heard while recording. Emma increased the volume and pressed her ear to the speaker. Behind the tapping, almost too faint to detect, was what sounded like whispering. Emma couldn't make out words, just the sibilant rhythm of speech, distorted and unnatural. She hadn't heard any voices while recording. How had the phone captured this? A chill ran down Emma's spine. She deleted the video, suddenly uneasy about having it on her phone. That night, her dreams were troubled. In the murky space between sleeping and waking, Emma saw shadows moving outside her windows, heard whispers calling her name, felt unseen hands pressing against the glass, seeking entry. She woke drenched in sweat, her heart hammering. Milo was perched at the foot of her bed, ears flattened, eyes fixed on the bedroom door. "Maybe I should get a security camera," Emma told Jess over lunch the next day. She hadn't mentioned the tapping, framing her concern as general first-time renter anxiety. "That's not a bad idea," Jess agreed. "There's those doorbell ones that send alerts to your phone. My parents have one." Emma nodded, already researching options on her phone. "I just want to make sure it's nothing, probably raccoons or something." That afternoon, she installed a basic security camera facing her backyard, with a clear view of the kitchen door. The model promised night vision and motion activation. Emma felt better having it in place, more in control. That night, she fell asleep earlier than usual, exhausted from poor sleep and mounting anxiety. Her dreams quickly turned dark. She was trapped in her house, doors multiplying endlessly as she tried to escape, each one opening to reveal only another door. Behind her, something pursued, its breathing ragged and hungry. Emma woke with a start, heart pounding. The digital clock on her nightstand read 12:03 a.m. She grabbed her phone, checking the security app. No alerts, no motion detected. Relief washed over her until she heard it tap, tap, tap. Not from the kitchen door this time. The sound came from her bedroom window. Emma's blood turned to ice. Her bedroom was on the second floor. Tap. Deliberate, insistent, impossible. Milo growled low in his throat, for standing on end as he stared at the window. The curtains were drawn, but Emma could swear she saw the fabric move slightly with each tap, as if something, was pressing against it from outside. Emma couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The tapping continued, growing slightly louder, slightly faster. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The silence felt worse somehow. Emma remained frozen, listening so intently her ears rang. Minutes passed. Finally, with trembling hands, she reached for her phone and pulled up the security camera feed. The backyard was empty. The kitchen door is undisturbed. Whatever had tapped at her window hadn't triggered the motion sensor. Emma didn't sleep again that night. She sat with her back against the headboard. Lights on. Milo curled tensely beside her, both of them watching the window until dawn broke. In the harsh light of morning, Emma examined the exterior of her house. No ladder marks beneath her window, no footprints in the soft earth of the garden beds. The ancient oak stood too far from the house for any branch to reach her window. Emma called her landlord, asking about previous tenants, about any strange occurrences in the house. The landlord seemed surprised by her questions. "It's been a rental for decades," he said. "Most students like yourself. No complaints I can recall. Is there a specific issue you're having?" Emma hesitated. "Just some strange noises at night. Probably nothing. Old houses settle," he replied, the explanation Emma had given herself days ago. "But if you notice any maintenance issues, let me know right away." That night Emma invited Jess to stay over, too embarrassed to explain her growing fear, but desperate not to be alone. "Nice place," Jess said, examining the half-unpacked living room. "Creaky, like you said, but charming." "Thanks for coming over," Emma said. "I've been having trouble sleeping lately. New place and all." They stayed up late watching movies, and Emma almost convinced herself she was being ridiculous about the whole thing. When midnight approached, she turned up the volume on the TV, trying to mask any sounds that might come. But at exactly 12, the tapping began. Not just at one door or window, but several. A symphony of gentle knocks echoing throughout the house. Even over the blaring TV, the sound was unmistakable. Jess froze mid-sentence. "What is that?" Emma felt simultaneous dread and validation. "You hear it too?" The tapping intensified, coming from the front door, the kitchen door, the living room windows, upstairs, everywhere at once, growing louder with each repetition. Tap, 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 tap. Jess stood, face pale. "Emma, what the hell is going on?" Before Emma could answer, the lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the house into darkness. In the sudden silence, the tapping stopped. Then, from somewhere in the darkness, came the sound of a door, slowly, quietly opening. Emma reached for Jess in the darkness, her fingers closing around her friend's trembling arm. The sound of the opening door had come from deeper within the house, somewhere down the hallway leading to the study and the basement stairs. "Did you leave any doors open?" Jess whispered, voice barely audible. Emma shook her head before realizing Jess couldn't see her. "No," she breathed. "Everything was locked. I checked twice." The piercing silence that followed was almost worse than the tapping had been. Both women stood frozen in the living room, straining to hear any movement. Milo had disappeared, likely hiding under furniture. "We need light," Emma murmured, fumbling for her phone. The screen's blue glow illuminated their frightened faces as she activated the flashlight function. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing the empty doorway to the hallway. Jess gripped Emma's arm tighter. "We should leave. Now." Emma nodded, taking a cautious step toward the front door. The floorboard beneath her foot released a long, agonizing creak, the sound impossibly loud in the silent house. They froze again, listening. From somewhere deep within the house came a soft thud, like something heavy being moved. Then silence. "Someone's in here," Jess mouthed, eyes wide with terror. Emma directed the phone's beam toward the front door. Just 20 feet away. They could make it. She took another step forward, pulling Jess along with her. The tapping resumed, no longer at the doors and windows, but inside the house now. 3 distinct taps, coming from the walls around them, as if someone were knocking from within the plaster and wood. Tap, tap. Emma felt Jess tugging her toward the front door with increasing urgency. They reached it in seconds, Emma fumbling with the deadbolt with shaking hands. She yanked the door open, and they tumbled onto the front porch, gulping the cold night air. "My car's just down the street," Jess gasped, already pulling Emma toward the sidewalk. They didn't speak again until they were locked inside Jess's sedan, engine running, heater blasting against the October chill. "What the hell was that?" Jess finally asked, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Emma stared back at the dark silhouette of the house. From the outside, it looked perfectly ordinary, no sign of the terror that had unfolded within. "I don't know," she admitted. "It's been happening every night at midnight. Just the tapping at first, but now." "You've been dealing with this alone." Jess looked horrified. "Why didn't you say something?" "I thought I was imagining things, or it was just the house settling, like everyone kept saying." Emma pressed her palms against her eyes. "I didn't want to sound crazy." "Well, I heard it too, and we are not going back in there tonight." Jess put the car in drive. "You're staying at my place." Emma woke the next morning on Jess's couch, momentarily disoriented before the previous night's events came flooding back. Sunlight streamed through the apartment windows, making the terror they'd experienced seem distant and almost absurd. "I need to go back," Emma said over the coffee Jess handed her. My laptop with my thesis is there. My textbooks." "Mellow," Jess frowned. "At least let me come with you. And we go during daylight only." They arrived at Emma's house just before noon. Everything looked normal, almost suspiciously so. The front door was still ajar from their hasty exit. Inside, the house was quiet and bathed in sunlight. "Mellow," Emma called, moving cautiously through the rooms. The orange tabby emerged from under the sofa, seemingly unharmed but unusually skittish, darting away from Emma's outstretched hand. "Check if anything's missing," Jess suggested, staying close to the front door, clearly uncomfortable being back in the house. Emma did a quick inventory. Her laptop sat undisturbed on the coffee table. Her wallet and keys remained on the kitchen counter. Nothing seemed out of place or stolen, at first glance. But as she moved through the house more carefully, subtle wrongness began to register. The chair at her desk had been moved slightly, angled away from where she always left it. A book on her nightstand had been shifted, no longer aligned with the edge as she meticulously kept it. The bathroom towel hung unevenly, though she distinctly remembered straightening it yesterday morning. "Something was in here," Emma said quietly when she returned to the living room. "Moving things, just slightly." Jess looked skeptical but didn't argue. "Let's grab what you need and go. We can figure this out from my place." Emma nodded, quickly gathering her laptop, some clothes, and Melow's essentials. As she was zipping her backpack, the overhead light flickered once. Then again, both women looked up. "Faulty wiring," Jess suggested, her voice tight. Before Emma could respond, every light in the living room pulsed in unison. A quick flash followed by dimming, then another flash. Miller yelled from his carrier, clawing at the mesh door. "Time to go," Emma said, grabbing her things. They reached Jess's apartment by early afternoon. Emma spent the rest of the day researching possible explanations online. Everything from practical as faulty electrical systems, crafty intruders to the supernatural poltergeists, hauntings. None seemed to fully explain what they'd experienced. "You could file a police report," Jess suggested as evening approached. "At least about the potential break-in." Emma considered this. "And tell them what?" "That someone might be in my house, but they only move things an inch and tap on surfaces at midnight. They'd think I was wasting their time." Despite her brave front, Emma dreaded the thought of returning to the house. She felt safer at Jess's, but knew she couldn't stay indefinitely. She had rent to pay, classes to attend, a thesis to complete. Maybe installing more security cameras would help, she mused. If I could just catch whatever it is on video. That night, Emma's sleep was plagued by vivid nightmares. She dreamed of her house, its walls becoming transparent to reveal hundreds of shadowy figures pressed between the studs. Their fingers tapping against the plaster, their whispers growing louder as midnight approached. In the dream, she discovered a door she'd never seen before, and beyond it, endless darkness from which she could hear something massive breathing. She woke gasping, sheets twisted around her legs, the memory of bony fingers brushing against her cheek lingering with terrifying clarity. 2 days later, Emma returned to her house, armed with additional security cameras, a new door security bar, and burning sage Jess had insisted would cleanse the energy. Jess had offered to stay with her, but Emma had declined. She couldn't keep imposing, and part of her needed to face this alone, to prove to herself she wasn't losing her mind. The house felt different upon her return, colder somehow, despite the thermostat reading normal. Milo refused to leave his carrier at first, and when he finally did, he moved through the rooms cautiously, back arched, eyes darting to dark corners. Emma spent the afternoon setting up the new cameras, positioning them to cover every entrance and main living area. The system would send alerts to her phone for any detected motion and store footage in the cloud. She felt marginally safer with the technology in place. As evening fell, Emma's anxiety mounted. She debated calling Jess, asking her to come over after all, but pride stopped her. She'd face whatever happened at midnight, capture it on camera, and finally have proof. By 11, Emma had positioned herself in the living room, laptop open to the security camera feeds, lights on throughout the house. Milo was nowhere to be seen, having disappeared upstairs hours earlier. At 11:30, the first irregularity, her coffee mug, which she'd placed on the side table, had somehow moved to the center of the coffee table. Emma stared at it, certain she hadn't moved it herself. No alert had come from the security system. At 11:45, the temperature dropped noticeably. Emma's breath formed small clouds in front of her face. The heating system hummed loudly but produced no warmth. At 11:55, the lights began to flicker, not all at once but in sequence, as if something was moving through the house, affecting each fixture as it passed. Emma's eyes remained fixed on the security feeds, waiting. Her phone was clutched in one hand, Jess's number ready to dial. Midnight arrived. The tapping began immediately, louder than ever before, coming from every surface. Walls, ceiling, doors, windows. The security camera feeds showed nothing, no movement, no intruders. Just empty rooms filled with the sound of relentless tapping. Tap, tap. Emma scrambled to her feet, turning in circles as she tried to locate a source, a cause, anything to explain the overwhelming noise. The taps grew faster, more insistent, no longer in synchronized groups of 3 but chaotic, frenzied, like dozens of impatient fists demanding entry, and then silence. Complete, sudden silence that felt like a vacuum, pulling the air from her lungs. A soft thud came from upstairs. Emma's gaze shot to the laptop screen, to the camera covering the upstairs hallway. Nothing appeared on the feed, but she'd heard the sound clearly. She grabbed her phone, finger hovering over Jess's number, then paused. She needed to know. She needed to see. With trembling legs, Emma moved toward the stairs, phone flashlight illuminating the way. Each step creaked beneath her weight as she climbed slowly, pressed against the wall. At the top landing, she paused, listening. Another sound, a soft scraping, like furniture being moved, came from her bedroom. Emma approached the door, which stood slightly ajar. With a deep breath, she pushed it open, light beam cutting through the darkness. Her bedroom looked undisturbed at first glance. Then she noticed Milo, crouched beneath the bed, eyes reflecting the light, pupils dilated in fear. The cat was staring fixedly at the closet. The closet door, which Emma always left closed, now stood open several inches. As she watched, frozen in the doorway, the closet door moved, not swinging open, but closing slowly, as if gently pushed by an unseen hand. When it latched closed, the sound seemed unnaturally loud in the silent room. Emma backed away, nearly stumbling down the stairs in her haste to return to the living room. She grabbed her laptop, checking all the camera feeds again. Nothing unusual appeared on any screen. A flicker of movement caught her peripheral vision, something dark and swift passing through the kitchen doorway. Emma's head snapped up, but the space was empty when she looked directly at it. It happened again minutes later. A shadow sliding along the wall, visible only from the corner of her eye, disappearing when she turned to confront it. Then again, this time passing behind her, reflected in the darkened window glass. Emma spun around, heart hammering. "Who's there?" she demanded, voice breaking. "What do you want?" The shadows continued their dance at the edges of her vision, growing bolder, staying visible longer before vanishing. Emma felt surrounded, watched from every angle by things she couldn't quite see. Then came a sound that turned her blood to ice, the unmistakable creak of footsteps crossing the floor directly above her head. Heavy, deliberate steps moving from her bedroom toward the stairs. Emma backed toward the front door, eyes fixed on the staircase, phone gripped so tightly her knuckles whitened. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs, then began to descend, each step creaking under invisible weight. One by one, the lights in the house began to extinguish, plunging the rooms into darkness, pushing Emma closer to the door to escape. Only the living room light remained, flickering weakly as the footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. Emma's flashlight beam revealed nothing on the steps, yet the sound of footfalls continued across the hallway floor, approaching the living room where she stood. As the last light gave out, Emma glimpsed a shadow darker than the surrounding darkness slide through the doorway. Not a vague shape or trick of light, but a distinctly human silhouette, moving with purpose toward her. Emma screamed, fumbling with the door handle behind her, as she yanked it open and stumbled onto the porch. One terrifying realization crystallized in her mind: something, was living inside her home. Emma's scream pierced the night as she stumbled down the porch steps, nearly falling in her desperation to put distance between herself and the house. The shadow she'd seen was unmistakably human in form. Not some supernatural entity or trick of light, but a person. Someone who had been living in her home, watching her, tormenting her. Her trembling fingers fumbled with her phone as she backed away from the house. Never taking her eyes off the darkened doorway, she dialed 911, praying for a signal. 911. "What's your emergency?" The operator's voice was startlingly calm against Emma's ragged breathing. "Someone's in my house." Emma gasped, retreating further into the street. "There's an intruder. Please, I need help." "What's your address, Mom?" Emma rattled off her address, watching as the front door of her house slowly closed, as if pulled shut by an unseen hand. "Please hurry. I think they've been living in my house for days." "Are you in a safe location?" the operator asked. "I'm outside, in the street," Emma replied, glancing around the deserted neighborhood. The houses on either side of hers were dark, their occupants either asleep or away. No one to help her. "Officers are on their way. Stay on the line with me." Emma nodded, though the operator couldn't see her. Her eyes remained fixed on the house, watching for any movement at the windows. Had she imagined the shadow? Was her mind fracturing under the stress of the past week? No, she knew what she'd seen. Someone was in there. A new thought struck her with a sickening force. Milo was still inside. Her cat was trapped with whatever was stalking through her home. "My cat," she whispered, more to herself than the operator. "I left my cat inside." "Mom, do not re-enter the premises," the operator warned, hearing her distress. "Officers will be there in minutes." Emma took a step toward the house, then froze. Through the living room window, she caught a flicker of movement, the beam of a flashlight sweeping across the walls, confirming her worst fears. Not a ghost, not her imagination, a real, physical intruder. Distant sirens grew louder, and Emma felt a surge of relief. Help was coming. She backed further away from the house, eyes still locked on the windows. The sirens fell silent as two police cruisers turned onto her street, headlights illuminating Emma's terrified form standing in the road. 4 officers emerged, approaching her with hands hovering near their weapons. "Are you the caller?" one asked, a middle-aged man with a thick mustache. Emma nodded, pointing toward the house. "There's someone inside. I saw a flashlight moving around just before you arrived." The officers exchanged glances. "Stay here," the mustachioed officer instructed, before gesturing to his colleagues. Two approached the front door while two others moved around the sides of the house, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Emma watched, hugging herself against the cold, as the officers entered her home. Minutes stretched like hours as she waited, jumping at every sound. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, the officers emerged. "We've searched the entire premises," the lead officer reported, approaching Emma. "No sign of an intruder. Doors and windows are secure." "That's impossible," Emma protested. "I saw someone in there, a shadow, moving through my living room, and there was a flashlight." "Mom," the officer interrupted gently, "we found your cat, but no evidence of a break-in or an intruder. The house is empty." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "Check again, please. They've been hiding in there for days. They move things around. They tap on the walls at midnight." The skepticism in the officer's eyes was unmistakable, but he nodded. "We'll take another look." He turned to one of his colleagues. "Blake, take Mims. Clarke's statement while we do another sweep." Officer Blake, a younger woman with kind eyes, guided Emma to sit in one of the cruisers while the others returned to the house. As Emma recounted the events of the past week, the tapping, the whispers on her recording, the moved objects, the shadowy figure, she could see the officer's expression shift from sympathy to doubt. "Have you been under unusual stress lately?" Officer Blake asked carefully. "Graduate school can be intense, I know." Emma felt a flare of indignation. "This isn't stress or lack of sleep. Something is wrong with my house. Or someone is living in it without my knowledge." Before Officer Blake could respond, the radio on her shoulder crackled to life. "Blake, bring the homeowner in. We found something." Hope and vindication surged through Emma as she followed Officer Blake back to the house. The lead officer met them in the hallway, his expression unreadable. "Miss Clarke, are you aware of any access to a crawl space in this house?" he asked. Emma shook her head. "No, I just moved in a week ago. The landlord never mentioned one." The officer nodded, gesturing for her to follow him toward the kitchen. "We found something unusual." He pointed to the pantry, which Emma had used for storing canned goods and pasta. "Look at the back wall." But Emma peered inside. The shelves had been pulled away from the wall, revealing what appeared to be a seam in the paneling. A small, almost imperceptible door was set into the wall, now standing slightly ajar. "That wasn't there before," Emma whispered, blood draining from her face. "Or I never noticed it. It's well concealed." The officer agreed. "Old house like this, probably built during Prohibition as a hiding place. We need to check inside. Wait here." Emma watched as two officers pulled the shelving unit further away and opened the small door wider. Beyond it lay darkness. One officer switched on his flashlight and crawled through the opening. Silence fell over the kitchen as they waited. Emma's heart hammered in her chest, a mixture of fear and validation coursing through her. She wasn't crazy. There was a hidden space in her house, a perfect hiding place for someone who wanted to terrorize her. The officer emerged moments later, expression grim. "You need to see this," he said to his colleagues, ignoring Emma's questioning look. Another officer crawled through, then another. Their whispered conversation was too quiet for Emma to hear. "What is it?" she finally demanded. "What did you find?" The lead officer turned to her, hesitating. "Evidence that someone has been using that space recently." "What kind of evidence?" Emma pressed. "Food wrappers, a sleeping bag, some personal items." The officer's discomfort was palpable. "And photographs of you." Emma felt her knees weaken. "Photos of me? From where?" "Taken through windows, mostly. Some appear to be from inside the house, while you were sleeping." The horror of this revelation washed over Emma in waves. Someone had been watching her, photographing her, hiding mere feet away as she slept, ate, studied, unaware of their presence. We need to get a forensics team in here, the officer continued. And you shouldn't stay in the house tonight. Is there somewhere you can go? Emma nodded numbly, thinking of Jess's apartment. My friend's place. Good. We'll need to ask you more questions, but that can wait until morning. As the officers secured the scene and called for backup, Emma sat at her kitchen table, trying to process this new reality. A human intruder seemed almost worse than the supernatural explanation she'd been beginning to accept. Ghosts didn't take photographs of sleeping women. Do you have any idea who might want to frighten you like this? Officer Blake asked gently, sitting across from her. An ex-boyfriend. Someone from school who might be obsessed with you. Emma tried to think through her fear. No, no one comes to mind. The person may have been living here before you moved in, Blake suggested. Using the crawl space as a hideout, your arrival may have disrupted their routine. The thought made Emma's skin crawl. How long had someone been living in the walls of this house? Had the previous tenants experienced the same terror? A commotion near the pantry drew their attention. The officers had extracted something, or someone, from the crawl space. A figure, wrapped in a blanket, was being handcuffed despite their struggling. Emma caught only a glimpse: wild, matted hair, clothes filthy and torn, a face gaunt with malnutrition yet twisted in rage. Before the officers hustled the person outside to a waiting cruiser. Did you recognize them? Blake asked, watching Emma closely. Emma shook her head, still in shock. No, never seen them before. We found identification in the crawl space. The name matches a missing persons report from 2 years ago. Mental health history disappeared from a treatment facility. They've been living in my walls for 2 years. Emma whispered. We'll know more after questioning, Blake said. For now, let's get you somewhere safe. Emma moved through the house in a daze, gathering essentials for another night at Jess's. As she packed a bag in her bedroom, she noticed Milo cowering under the bed, refusing to come out. It's okay, buddy, she coaxed. They're gone now. We're safe. But Milo remained hidden, eyes wide and fearful, fixed on a point behind Emma. A chill ran down her spine as she slowly turned around. The closet door stood slightly open, though she was certain it had been closed earlier. From within the dark space came a sound that froze her blood. 3 soft taps against the wood. Tap, tap. Officer, Emma called, voice shaking. I think there's someone else in here. No answer came from downstairs, where the police were busy processing the scene. Emma backed toward her bedroom door, eyes fixed on the closet. Officer Blake, she called, louder this time. The closet door began to open wider, inch by tortuous inch. Emma fumbled behind her for the doorknob, desperate to escape. A hand shot out from the closet, filthy, fingers unnaturally long, nails broken and caked with dirt. It gripped the edge of the door, pushing it fully open. Emma screamed, finally finding the doorknob and yanking it open. She stumbled into the hallway just as a figure lunged from the closet, emaciated, clothes hanging in tatters, face contorted in rage. Mine, the figure hissed, voice raw from disuse. My house. Emma turned to flee, but the stranger was unnaturally fast, leaping forward to grab her ankle. She crashed to the floor, head striking the hardwood with stunning force. Stars exploded behind her eyes as she felt herself being dragged backward toward her bedroom. Help, she screamed, clawing at the floor. Somebody help me. Footsteps thundered up the stairs as officers responded to her cries. The grip on her ankle tightened, then suddenly released as the intruder abandoned the prey to retreat into the darkness of the bedroom. In here. Emma gasped as Officer Blake appeared at the top of the stairs, weapon drawn. The officers rushed past Emma, entering her bedroom with weapons raised. Shots rang out, 1, 2, 3 in rapid succession, followed by an inhuman scream of pain and rage. Emma lay in the hallway, blood trickling from the gash on her forehead, consciousness wavering. Through blurring vision, she saw officers emerging from her room, faces grim. Second suspect neutralized. One reported into his radio. We need medical assistance for the homeowner. But Emma felt gentle hands helping her sit up, pressing something against her bleeding head wound. You going to be okay? Officer Blake assured her, though her voice seemed to come from very far away. The house is secure now. Both intruders are accounted for. Emma tried to focus, to make sense of what the officer was saying. Buth, a second suspect was hiding in your closet. Partner of the first one, we think. They've been living in the crawl space together. The revelation washed over Emma as darkness crept into the edges of her vision. Two people had been hiding in her house, watching her, terrorizing her. The tapping had been their signal to each other, their way of communicating through the walls. As consciousness slipped away, Emma felt something brush against her hand. Milo had emerged from under the bed, pressing himself against her side, his familiar warmth a small comfort amid the horror. Hours later, Emma woke in a hospital bed, head throbbing beneath bandages. Jess sat beside her, face etched with worry. "You're awake," said, gripping Emma's hand. "Thank God." Emma tried to speak, her throat parched and raw. "The house. Don't worry about that now," Jess soothed. "You're safe. That's what matters." But Emma needed to know. What happened? Who were they? Jess hesitated, then sighed. The police said they were siblings. Homeless, mentally ill. They'd been living in that crawl space for nearly 2 years, through multiple tenants. They considered it their home and saw renters as intruders. Emma closed her eyes, processing this information. Human monsters, not supernatural ones. Somehow that seemed worse. "Where's Milo?" she asked, suddenly remembering her cat. A sad look crossed Jess's face. "Emma, Milo was injured during the struggle. The vet's doing everything they can." But Emma felt tears welling up, adding to the crushing weight of everything that had happened. Her innocent cat, caught in this nightmare with her. "I need to see him," she insisted, trying to sit up despite the pain. "Soon," Jess promised, gently pressing her back against the pillows. "Rest now." As Emma drifted back towards sleep, the medication dulling her pain and clouding her thoughts, she could have sworn she heard it. Distant but unmistakable. Tap, 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 just outside her hospital window as midnight struck. It takes a lot of time to create these videos. I would really appreciate your support. All I ask for is a quick like on the video and subscribe. Thank you so much.